Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jerred Moon here, and it's just me today, and I am back. I took a long break from the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. I mean, long in my world, haven't taken that long of a break on the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast basically ever. So this is going to be a short episode, just kind of update you on what's been going on and what you have to look forward to, and then just some updates around Garage Gym Athlete, around my life and all that good stuff. So yeah, I moved. I think I mentioned that recently, building a new garage gym, got all this new equipment. But in the course of doing that, I was just completely toppled with not having a place to record, not having a studio, not having any of these things. And most of the time in years past, I would have really stressed about that and found temporary locations to record and just made sure I got it done anyway, or recorded, on my phone and published it anyway. And I just didn't do that this time. I was just like, you know what? I'm going to take a break. No one's going to care. It's going to be fine. So ultimately, that's what it was. Definitely not quitting, not stopping, not slowing down. Garage Gym Athlete isn't going anywhere. If anybody had any concerns like that, I did get a couple messages on Instagram asking when the next podcast would be. So I do appreciate, people reaching out and all those good things, but we are here. It's just basically, life stuff going on with the rebuild of HQ, which I do want to talk about some more. So if you've been following me on Instagram, you've probably seen some of this. I have been building a new HQ. I've always been a work from home guy, but we bought a new house, a new property, and it has this 1,200 square foot kind of barn space that we just finished completely. So within this space, I now have an 800 square foot gym, and then the other 400 feet has been partitioned off between an office and a studio. So now I have a very dedicated place to record podcasts. And in all honesty, to increase the content efforts at Garage Gym Athlete and everywhere else that I do content. So actually, having higher quality videos in the gym, on the podcast, better audio quality. I'm investing in all of those things to continue doing podcasts for a very long time. So again, not going anywhere. If anything, we took a break to reset and to get better. This podcast does not reflect that because I am still we're 98% there on the studio and everything else. But I just wanted to get this podcast out there and let everybody know what was going on. So if anything, things are going to get more serious at Garage Gym Athlete, not less, over the next couple of weeks and months. So that's what you have to look forward to. We'll be diving into science, having new people on the podcast, all sorts of stuff coming at you really fast. So I'm looking forward to all that. I did completely rebuild the gym. If you didn't catch one of my previous episodes, when I sold my previous house, they bought all of the gym equipment. All the gym equipment is gone. And so I went over everything that I had to get. All of that is it's installed, it's built, and I have it all, and it's all awesome. It's very intentional purchases. I'm going to be going over some of those in future podcasts, what I like and how things are working out, how the gym's working out, and there'll be a lot more videos on the YouTube channel for Garage Gym Athlete of me in the gym and giving that official tour. So I'll announce that on the podcast when I do a tour of the new HQ and the new gym, so you have that to look forward to as well. Now, that's about it on the content and life stuff that's been going on. That's why the podcast was kind of paused. But we do have a lot of different studies. And one thing that I've been looking at a lot lately is diving back into the self-determination theory. So if you've been around the podcast for a long time, the self-determination theory, it's a body of research, started in the 1970s. And it's something I've geeked out on for years. I mean, going back to when I first started as a fitness coach, because I wanted to understand, when I started working with people who weren't motivated and didn't know, they didn't know how to stick to a program. I had not worked with those types of people before. I had started working with special operators who were very much, we'll do whatever you say. And then I got into this realm of working with people who just couldn't stick to the program. And I didn't understand. I was like, wait, no, I can write the perfect program. Why aren't you doing it? Or in my mind, what I thought the perfect program was at that time. And then it was just like, oh, okay, this is what coaching really is. Coaching is getting someone to see the result. It's not so much about the program. And so I started geeking out on that stuff years and years ago, really diving into the psychology. And I just haven't been, as focused on it lately, but that's going to be a big part of the Garage Gym Athlete podcast moving forward, is diving not into just the nuts and bolts of, supplementation and concurrent training, but also the mindset, getting back to a lot of those things on like helping people stick to the programs, finding that little extra bit of effort and drive within you, how to uncover it, how to unlock it. And I'll kind of end the podcast with like the main 3 tenets of the self-determination theory and what you should be thinking about as we head into kind of this next phase for Garage Gym Athlete. But that's what we're going to be focusing on, or I'm going to be focusing on a lot on top of going over like scientific research, all those kind of things. So that's what I'm diving into. That's what I've been studying and looking at for a while now. And I'm really psyched to be bringing that to the podcast and having some more candid conversations about just the realities of what it's like to battle yourself, battle that mindset. And then another thing I want to bring to the podcast, because it gets a lot of, a lot of engagements and a lot of questions whenever I talk about it, is training youth, as this is something that's obviously just progressed and evolved with me as my kids have aged. Like when I started this podcast, I think I only had 2 kids, and the oldest one was probably a couple years old, and now my oldest is 13. I've been podcasting for a long time, but I'm starting to train them, and I train other kids during the summer as well, and that's only picking up more and more. In-person training, not just my kids, but youth athletes in general. And I've learned a ton, and I've talked about it here and there, but I'd like to start talking about that more as well, because I feel like there's a lot of crap out there. And then as I interact with other parents and other training programs and other stuff like that, I also realize that most parents and adults are trying to train their children like they are tiny adults, like that, like your 10-year-old is just a small adult and they can handle all the volume, they can handle all that, all the demands of, a typical advanced athlete, when in reality you can't. Not only are you doing the training wrong, you're doing the volume wrong, you're taking the approach wrong. I just see so much stuff wrong now that I'm in this world that it's crazy. And what's worse is I'm seeing adult level injuries, not in my kids, but like other youth athletes, like injuries that you should only ever see from like in an adult, like a serious athlete. I'm starting to see kids, my kids' friends pop up with these things, and it's mind-boggling. Like I just can't get over it. So anyway, that's another new thing I'll be bringing to the podcast, talking about youth athletic training, what I'm doing specifically, because I've done some high-level stuff here and there, but I want to get in the weeds a little bit more. One, I think it's underserved, and 2, I'm no expert in this field. I don't have some sort of youth certification or whatever. Like I just want to talk about this more because I think I have a lot of experience now in training youth athletes over the last couple of years. I just haven't talked about it as much. So I'll be diving into that more as well. And that's kind of new. That's like what you have to come, what's coming on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. And then another interesting study I came across recently that I just wanted to kind of like show or talk to the community about, which I thought was really cool, was I think if you are in this like fitness world, industry, health world, you'll see that creatine is kind of exploding. That's what we're noticing on our end, is that creatine's been around forever, and we've talked about it on the podcast. In fact, if you go back to any of my like podcasts where I talk about supplementation, I typically would only recommend 2 to 3 supplements that I thought it would be okay for athletes to take for long periods of time. And it was creatine, protein, and then fish oil would be like a third that I'm pretty on board with. Everything else is maybe it'll help, maybe it won't. And creatine's really safe. And, I think it's like the most studied supplement, a lot of good out of creatine. But the reason it's exploding, I'd say just in the health world, is not just for the improved athletic performance and like muscle size and fullness and all of those kind of things. It's kind of exploding because of the nootropic effect, the effect it can have in your brain. And there's a really popular study that's been circling called Single Dose Creatine Improves Cognitive Performance and Induces Change in Cerebral High Energy Phosphate During Sleep Deprivation. So what's interesting about this study is if you are sleep deprived, you can take high doses of creatine and perform the same, if not better, than if you weren't sleep deprived. And I put this to the test recently, and this is why I want to talk about it, because this is an N of 1 experiment. It was just me, and it was just one time. But it's almost like it's such a cool tool to have in the toolbox, knowing that this works in the acute sense. And so what I mean by that is, when you're typically taking creatine, if you take it today, you're not going to notice a huge improvement in your workout performance. And then in all honesty, you need to take it consistently 5 grams per day for 2 to 3 weeks, maybe up to a month, to notice all of the benefits, to notice any kind of, muscle change, performance benefits, all of those kind of things. It doesn't really work as much in the acute sense. You're just supposed to take it and keep taking it, and then you can take breaks or whatever. But what's cool about creatine in the cognitive performance side of things is it does seem to work in the acute sense, specifically with this sleep deprivation and just cognitive performance in general. So you can take this massive dose, 20 grams of creatine all at once if you're like sleep deprived, and then you have this, you're not as tired and your cognitive performance is still on point. So the other day, I had a meeting with a guy in Australia. And, I'll spare you all the details of why that meeting, but we could not find a time to meet. And he was like, how about this time, whatever time it was in Australia? And I looked at my calendar and I was like, that is 4 a.m. my time. That's a start time of 4 a.m. So I woke up at 3:30, was pretty much ready for the meeting by 3, woke up at 3:30 for this 4 a.m. meeting. I was pretty much ready for the meeting by 3:45. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this out today. So I took 20 to 25 grams of creatine that morning. And I was really on point for the meeting, which was awesome. Had the hour-long meeting, then I worked out, done working out. It's like 6 a.m. I'm done for the day as far as like work training-wise. And then I had my full day, right? Like a full work day after that, kids, schools, late night practices, and my son's football practice ends at 9 p.m. And I just felt good that entire day. And I didn't notice like that 2 or 3 p.m. lull. I didn't notice like any mental, degradation. Like I didn't notice anything. I just felt good. And that's not always even the case for me on any given day. Like sometimes if I have a really mentally demanding day, like a lot of conversations, podcasts, things where I have to be like more mentally on point, I'm kind of like done cognitively around 3 or 4 p.m. Like I can still function, but I'm talking about being really like on point mentally if I have a really, I just say big day, like where I'm having to be really focused in meetings or really focused in creating content or whatever, I need an easy day for the rest of the day after that. And that didn't happen that day. So this is something I'm playing with. Again, I'm not like trying to say, hey, this is the end all be all, but it's something that I thought was interesting. I came across that research, gave it a try in a situation where I was going to be sleep deprived. Oh yeah. So when I woke up at 3:30 or whatever, I didn't have 8 hours of sleep. I didn't go to bed that much earlier. I actually had to stay up late. So I only had a few hours of sleep. I don't remember how many it was. It's like 4 or 5 hours of sleep, something like that for that day. And I felt pretty good that whole day. Not something I'd want to do. Like at the end of the day, I would always prefer to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep over trying to take 20 grams of creatine every single day. Like, I don't think it's that. I think it's a good Band-Aid. It's not like something I'd want to do every single day, but something that's really, really interesting to me and thought, I could share with the community and something we could dive into more, maybe cover the study even more in depth. Now, what I wanted to end with was the self-determination theory, because I said I'm going to be talking about it more. And I want to just make sure you know the 3 tenets of the self-determination theory. If you're out there struggling mentally right now, or you do struggle with sticking to the program or program hopping or whatever. And the main 3 components of the self-determination theory are autonomy, competence, and connectedness. So that's autonomy, competence, and connectedness. And what the self-determination theory looks at is your drive, your self-motivation. What gets you to stick to things? How do we keep you motivated? How do we keep you determined? And there's a lot of sub-branches and branches of this research, but the main 3 tenets are going to be the autonomy, competence, and connectedness. And so autonomy is just making sure that you're doing something because you want to. You have autonomously selected whatever it is you're doing. So if we look at fitness, make sure that whatever you're doing is what you enjoy and that you want to do, and not what someone is telling you is the best thing to do. And I noticed this because people get caught up in trends, right? Like a big trend right now would be what people are calling hybrid training, what we've called concurrent training for well over a decade, where it's, oh yeah, you got to lift and run. And it's, yeah, well, what if you don't want to do that? And you get caught up in the hype of doing these programs or whatever, but you're not really that into it and you don't stick to it, or you're not as intense as you should be, and you're not seeing the results that you want because you're just doing something that you've got excited about. You saw online, you saw an Instagram influencer do, and so you thought it'd be cool for you to do. That's not autonomy. Autonomy is like where you're like truly like interested in something and you select it. So you have to be very honest with yourself about the autonomy piece of this. And honestly, you have to be honest with yourself on all of these. So that autonomy piece is really important. And I've been talking to people about this a lot because if you don't enjoy something, just don't do it. If you don't truly want to lift weights and run and you're like, you know what? I just want to play pickleball. That's it. Guess what? That's great. That'll keep you in shape. Now, I'd love to throw some strength training into that if I could, but if I didn't have any selection other than pickleball or nothing, I want you to do pickleball. Go do it, right? Go do that thing. You selected it. So that's the biggest thing, is making sure that you selected whatever the activity is. So really keep that in mind in your own fitness program and what you're doing. Now, the next is competence, and this is making sure that you're actually getting better at something, that you have the ability to influence change. And so I think any form of fitness can be this if you want it to be. Because even in the most boring form of fitness, my opinion, is like hypertrophy bodybuilding style training. There's nothing more boring than that to me. But it's good. Like there's a lot of good that can come of it. I've done it for years, so don't get me wrong. But it's hard to argue competence in that, other than the weights possibly moving up or the reps going up. So if I was doing barbell bicep curls with, 50 pounds this week and I go up to 50 pounds, 55 pounds next week, yeah, that's competence. It's improvement. I'm seeing that I can make progress. I'm getting better at something. Or if it's like, hey, I did 50 pounds this week and I did 10 reps. Next week, I'll do 12 reps, then 14 reps, so on and so forth. So tracking your progress in whatever you do is probably the most important thing, or if it's an actual skill. And when we get to skills, we're talking about things like you could use a sandbag, you could use a mace, you could use a kettlebell. These are all more skilled movements. Olympic lifts are more skilled movements. Anything that requires a little bit more skill, meaning practice, because you don't need to practice a barbell bicep curl a whole lot. Like I could teach you a barbell bicep curl in about 30 seconds with perfect form, and then I don't really need to teach you again. But Olympic weightlifting, you need a coach to watch you almost every session for years before you even feel like you almost have it figured out, right? So that's the difference in competence, is you have to select something that you're actually getting better at. That's also why, going back to the pickleball example, is like if you can actually get better at that. That's why having some sort of sports program as a part of what you're doing, whether you play tennis or golf, which I don't really include as a fitness routine, but like something like that, there's a large competence piece where you're actually getting better at something. And so making sure that that's a part of your program too will make sure that you're doing what's in line with all the research to say driven and motivated. So autonomy and competence, make sure you can influence it. Because the worst thing that you could do is what a lot of people do, which is like this mindless consistency is what I call it. Is I've seen people in the gym who go to the gym each and every single day, and they're consistent as hell, and they've done it for years, but they just don't look like they work out. And I'm sure their blood markers are great, and like cardiovascular, all that, like respiratory, they're good to go. But if you want to look a certain way or be able to do something cool, then your training has to be a little bit different than that, right? Like you have to be getting better in some capacity. That's why having new cycles every 12 weeks, like we do a Garage Gym Athlete, or documenting your progress, those kind of things keep you in the game, mentally engaged, and actually help you look good and perform well. So those are things that you want to think about. Now, the last thing is connectedness, or relatedness is another term they use in the research. And this is just making sure that you have people to do it with. And this could be any kind of community, right? So Garage Gym Athlete, we have an online community. I do think that helps, or having a training partner come over, even if you're a Garage Gym Athlete. Like I do most of my training sessions alone, but if you could have one training session per week where somebody comes over, or if a neighbor wants to come over in the mornings, something like that, there has to be this connectedness piece. Now, I love training alone. In all honesty, I do. I prefer being alone over having a training partner, but occasionally it's nice to have someone over just to have that training partner, to have that conversation, that interaction, maybe even teach them if you're more advanced. That's normally the role that I have when someone comes to train with me, is I'm trying to teach them something, which I get a lot of, personally, I really love teaching people, fitness and things like that. And the mindset side of things. So this connectedness piece, I think, is often overlooked when it comes to fitness. Like we just want to put our headphones in and go, right? But try to work this in somewhere, even if it's an online community and like actually engaging with, hey, here's the progress I'm making, here's what I'm doing. And other people are happy to engage with you. Like I said, we have a community at Garage Gym Athlete, but there are a lot of places that you can do this or just even in person. So we're going to be diving into a lot more. That's really just the high level of self-determination theory. I really want to dive deep into the weeds of the mindset and some of these specific studies that they have on self-determination. So I think it's going to be awesome. So that's a quick overview of everything at Garage Gym Athlete. I have a few more surprises for you, but I'm going to hold off on those until the next podcast is recorded. We'll get Joe back on here and some other stuff. So anyway, that is the update from me. Sorry for making you wait for so long for the latest episode of the Garage Gym Athlete podcast, but we are back and back to our regular publishing schedule. So that's what you should expect of me. All right. That's it for this.